What is up, y'all? Happy weekend. Hopefully y'all are having a good one out there. I am so ready to record this episode. I've got my caramel apple candle burning. I've got my autumn leaves air freshener. I've got my little last podcast on the left spooky season mug with my little hot apple cider and the cinnamon stick. I'm wearing my fuzzy because it's finally starting to get just like the slightest amount of chill in the air right now. So I've got my fuzzy little sweater on from the Winchester house, and it says the spirits are calling and I must go, and it's just great. I'm ready. And you know, about my apple cider and not pumpkin spice anything, I want to like pumpkin spice. I really do. It hurts my heart that I don't like it. And I feel like I try it every year in hopes that my taste buds will change and I'll just suddenly like it just for the aesthetic and the vibes. But I just don't like anything pumpkin. I don't know. It's very upsetting. It is. But there are other alternatives, so it's fine. But yes, I am ready. I'm so ready. This week, let's talk about some mental load and also girl dinner. And we're going to talk about that trend in a little bit too. And I promise you they connect. I can't wait for y'all to see this connection. So I'm sure you've heard about the mental load. Let's start there. I feel like it's all over social media right now. And if you haven't seen it, it's just what it sounds like. It's the overwhelming responsibility and mental load of day-to-day life, honestly. It's all of those little decisions that just kind of pile up. And if it's in the household in relation to chores or, like I said, just a general adult responsibilities for the parents out there, it's, you know, the day-to-day tasks of raising kids and getting them baths on time, and did they eat or did they just throw it on the floor, and yada, 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 right? All of these little things in relationships, all that stuff. And a lot of times when the person that's feeling the overwhelming weight of the mental load shares this feeling with their partner, I feel like a lot of times the response we get is, oh, just make me a list, or just tell me what you need help with, or what do you want me to do? Just tell me what to do and I'll do it. And at first this seems like the considerate thing to say, right? It's like, oh, they're trying to help. They're trying to take the work off of the other person's plate. That's a good thing, yada, yada. However, the issue with this, and why I kind of personally hate the phrase, just make me a list, is because it still leaves all of the mental decision making to one person. Because now they have to decide, okay, which tasks can I delegate? Which ones should I delegate? Which ones can be even completed by the other person? Which ones can't? Which ones are they just going to ask more questions on? You have to like physically write it all down, like physically make a list for them, then give them the list, then probably, usually teach them how to do the task if necessary. Then you've got to monitor the progress, add in corrections as necessary, follow up to ensure it was actually done correctly and completely, which is a big thing for me, etc., right? They're just promoting you to now manager, project manager, task delegation. That's like a whole thing in itself to just make someone a list. You know what I mean? And all of that takes mental energy and focus, which the first person probably doesn't have in the first place if they're even bringing this up and saying like, hey, I'm overloaded right now. You know what I mean? And this is also where decision fatigue comes in, because I've been seeing a lot of that too. And that's also exactly what it sounds like. It's just fatigue from constant all day, everyday decision making, the little things. And it's always the little things, right? Because that just piles up. And so that's putting the pressure, again, on one person to make all of those decisions. And all those tiny little mental decisions and distractions, especially of, hey babe, how long do I microwave this? Can this go in the dishwasher? Is this muffin too hot to give to our toddler? What does this word mean? How do I know this? What's the phone number for this company? Etc., etc. And if you're in the middle of something, of another task or focusing on really anything else, now you've got to stop what you're doing, switch tracks in your brain, answer the question, or usually Google the answer that they're looking for. give your decision or answer, whatever the case may be, and then go back to what you were doing and what you were working on and try and get back into the groove. And then multiply that, of course, by like the tens, the hundreds of times that this happens throughout the day. And soon enough, you'll get a burnt out partner with decision fatigue because they're carrying all of the mental load. And now personally, what works for me and Daniel, because of course, like, we absolutely had some of this disconnect when we first started dating, and especially when we first started living together. Because the thing is, like, he wasn't raised to do chores ever. Like, he just didn't. And I think part of it was, I think there's a lot of reasons to it, but I think that can kind of be one of the hindering factors of why this is so prevalent now, because a lot of times with our partners, we'll do the whole like, I'll just do it myself. Because it's easier to just do it yourself, because then it's done correctly. But I think in the long run, that causes a lot of issues. And more importantly, maybe, like, what I care about more is if I have to do everything, I don't want to do that. Like, that's stressful. That's overwhelming. That's that mental load and that decision fatigue. I don't want to have to do everything. Like, I need a break too. And since Daniel wasn't really raised doing a lot of chores, he just straight up didn't know how to do a lot of stuff, just basic stuff, until he became an adult and was living on his own, and or until I came around. And I think what really helps for me and him was I was just straight up honest with him about chores and my expectations of the chores. Because we did have very different standards of what clean and what organized was. Which I will add this caveat, because I was absolutely more than once in the wrong in this scenario. This can easily be derailed into just nagging. So I had to be super self-aware of my own tone and my approach with him. Because no one wants to hear, oh, you did this wrong, you did that wrong, why didn't you do it this way, blah, blah, blah. And then I would kind of fall into that trap of, I'll just do it myself. However, like I said, that can also be a negative thing too, because then one, it will never change in the future. If you don't tell them, and if you don't correct the behavior, and if you just continue to do it yourself, of course you're going to be upset when you're still doing it yourself years later, right? Like, nothing will change if you don't change something. And so I knew absolutely I was starting to kind of hold like a grudge, and I would kind of hold resentment against him in the beginning because I was having to do everything myself. So what works for us is I feel so bad saying this, but I would take like the classic education tactic that I learned from school. It's called I do, we do, you do. Again, just what it sounds like. I do something to demonstrate. Here's how you peel potatoes, let's say. Then we do it together. We both peel potatoes together. And I'm like, yep, that's how you do it. No, you don't stab it with the pokey end. You actually like fillet it off, whatever. And then you do. So then Daniel peels the potatoes by himself. I do, we do, you do. And, that the strategy will gradually shift the responsibility for learning from one person to the other. So you have that, that step-by-step of like, here's what it looks like. Okay, you try it. You add in those corrections as necessary. So that way it's actually done correctly and completely. Because that was my thing. I'm like, it doesn't help me if you do something halfway and then I still have to go back behind you and fix it or finish the task, But then after that, once you add in that little bit of like teaching, I guess, or training, then it's good. Like, he knows the correct way to peel potatoes. I can say, hey, peel these potatoes while I'm doing something else, and I know it'll be done correctly. You know what I mean? And I know this sounds awful, like I'm grooming Daniel like some middle schooler, but honestly, I feel like that open communication and that honest expectation is what helps our marriage be so strong and stable. And now we're both happy and content with our chore delegation. So it's kind of like a win-win, you know what I mean? I don't have to go back behind him to redo anything. I don't have to feel burnt out because I'm doing everything myself, because it all falls on me. Like, it's just best of both worlds. And another thing that I feel like personally kind of helped us just sort of clear up the day-to-day cleaning tasks, and especially just like the basic like reset organization stuff, is the communication of why I wanted it to be a certain way. Because in the beginning, if I was just like, oh, this is dirty, or this is messy, or you didn't do this, or can't you just clean this up? He'd be like, why? It's a Tuesday night. Like, nobody's coming over. Why does it matter? Why does everything have to be perfect with you? Yada, yada, yada. And then I realized, I'm like, oh, well, like, I didn't actually explain why this matters to me, or why, this is kind of how I want my house set up, so on and so forth. And so then we sat down and I was like, hey, if stuff is cluttered, like for me personally, if stuff is cluttered, my brain feels cluttered too. It's like having 84 tabs open at once, and like some of them are playing music. It's just chaos, right? And I was like, I feel like I can't relax if stuff is not in its right place. Like if stuff is just strewn everywhere and not done, like that's all I can focus on. I can't focus on anything else. So if I'm having a really tough day and I come home and if stuff is just out of place or whatever, it would like put me on edge kind of, and I'd have a really hard time focusing on homework or whatever I needed to. Or, if we're trying to watch a movie and I'm like, I can't even like relax and enjoy this movie because I'm thinking about like how your boots are on the couch right now, or like the garbage is overflowing, whatever. And then after that, then he was like, oh, okay, that's fair. Like, I get it now. You know what I mean? And the caveat I will say to all of this that you may or may not have to add in is that you do absolutely have to take into consideration the presence of ADHD, because that absolutely does throw a wrench into things. People with ADHD just don't focus on things the same way. They don't see messes and disorganization the same way as someone that doesn't have ADHD. And so you can't expect them to anticipate household needs the same way as someone that doesn't have it. And so there'd be little things that I'll notice that Daniel just straight up does not see until I point it out. Like, perfect example. So in our bathroom, we have like the two sinks, you know what I mean? Like the his and hers side, whatever. And personally, for me, I like things, like I said, I kind of like I'm very much in my soft girl era right now. And so I really like things, like I love a clear counter. Love that. I don't like things kind of like super cluttered, like visually. I'm very much in that headspace right now of like, if it can go in a drawer or in a little decorative box or something like that, instead of just sitting on the counter, I'm all for it. However, Daniel is the complete opposite. He needs to be able to visually see things, otherwise they don't exist. Like, for him, object displacement and object permanence is so real. So for him, if his, razor, toothbrush, toothpaste, mouthwash, deodorant, hair gel, hairspray, if that stuff is not like visually directly in front of him, it doesn't exist. And he's like, where is it? I don't know. Am I out? Whatever. And so I had to kind of like, we had to do some compromising, right? So for him, I got him this cute little like 2-tiered tower thing that fits in his corner. And so all of his stuff that he uses every single day to get ready for work all fits on that counter. So it all has a little home and it goes on his little tower and it's just there. It's great, whatever. It's like best compromise I could find. And for him, like I said, he's very much a visual person. He sees disorganization differently. So he would be getting ready for work and he would use all of his stuff. He'd use his deodorant, whatever. And then he would put his deodorant, like I said, this is a perfect example I could find. He would use his deodorant and then just put it on the counter next to his sink instead of on the counter next to the sink in his little tower thing. It would just like go on the counter. And of course, you multiply this by, like I said, his razor, his toothbrush, the toothpaste, the cologne, the, 5, 6, 8 things he uses every day, whatever. And he would just kind of put it on the counter instead of in the little cubby tower thing where he could whatever. And I would always go behind him because it takes 0.8 seconds for me to pick up his deodorant from the counter and move it, 8 inches and put it on his little tower cubby thing. And the one day I was like, hey, Daniel, do you know that every single morning you leave your stuff out? Like, are you aware of this? He's like, no, I don't. And I was like, yeah, you do actually. Like, I got you this little tower so you can just put it there so you can still see it. It's easily accessible, but it just stacks things a bit better and it's just a little bit less messy. And he's like, I don't think I leave it out. I think I put it back. And I'm like, no, you definitely don't put it back. But then once I brought it up, now he's so cute. Bless his heart. He's like, okay, I'll try and put it back now. And he does. He's like almost always like 9.5 times out of 10, he'll put everything back on his little tower. And so it's like stuff like that. Like we see things differently. But if I wouldn't have just said like, hey man, I don't like a bunch of stuff cluttering the counter. I know it's not a big deal. I know it's not you. I know you're not doing this intentionally. I know you're not lazy. But just like, for me, for my mental health, like, can we put it on a little tower instead of on the counter? Takes 2 seconds, not even. Just having those clear expectations for us personally helped a ton. And that's for visual stuff, right? Like I said, that's perfect example I could think of. But there's a lot of things in households and in marriages where they're not always visible reminders like that. And so all of these invisible household responsibilities, like, okay, when do you change the air filter? When do you clean the dishwasher filter? Or like buying new soap before it runs out instead of after it runs out, whatever the case may be. Realistically, if you've got a partner with ADHD, you can't expect them to think of those kind of things because, like I said, their brains just aren't wired that way. And so it's not fair to set this expectation of, oh, you should anticipate some of these household needs before they're necessary, so that way you're always ahead. Because they're just not going to be able to do that. You know what I mean? Unless there's a very, very clear, distinct visual reminder for them. Like, hey, the garbage is actively overflowing. Maybe take it out. Or, something like that. You just can't expect them to be able to stay on top of all of that. Especially if their job is very mentally or physically demanding and taxing. Because that does take a lot out of you too. Because then they're making all those decisions at work and they're focusing on other stuff. So they come home and they've got some decision fatigue too. So yeah, sometimes helping them with visual reminders. Like we have a little dishwasher thing where it's dirty or clean. So like if it's loaded up, you can just make that quick a decision of like, all right, let's start it. Or it's clean, let's put it away. Or like we used to have one where it's like, did you feed the dogs? Yes or no, because sometimes if we're waking up at different times and then Marshy gets second breakfast, which obviously he doesn't care about. He's loving that. He loves when he gets second breakfast, but just little stuff like that. Or, you can kind of set little like schedules of, hey, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, change the cat litter, whatever the case may be. That can kind of help. But it's also, like I said, I think you can sort of also fall into that trap of just make me a list, because that can kind of be used as a cop-out sometimes. And that can be problematic as well. And now for the girl dinner plot twist connection here. I love this. Like I said, it's probably going to be a little surprising for y'all. I did not make the connection and then it finally clicked for me. So this girl dinner trend, right? You keep seeing it everywhere on social media. Again, if you don't know what I'm talking about because you hate social media, it's just a bunch of girls showing their food when they eat alone. And it's like the most basic, usually least nutritious food possible. Like it'll just be chicken nuggets and a Pop-Tart or like just chips and salsa or something like that. And I always saw these videos and I was like, yeah, that's relatable, but like, kind of don't get the purpose of showing this. You know what I mean? And then I'd see a bunch of reaction videos of people saying, oh, this just shows that girls are all trying to eat as little as possible. And I'm like, not really though. Like, I don't think that's actually it. And then finally, I saw a video by this girl. Her name's Paige Turner, if you want to give her a follow. And her input was just like immediate light bulb. And I'm like, dude, this is it. This is the point of this. It just clicked and I was like, damn, here we go. That's what it is. And then I was like, yeah, I absolutely do this. This is 100% me. And I've talked about this before, but in the Midwest, when it comes to food and how just Midwest environment, how I was raised, all those things put together, we take food and meal times so seriously. It's like a bonding thing. Like if you eat together, that's a thing. And it's not just consuming food at the same time. It's like absolutely, it's like a communal joint thing that you share together. It's a time to come together. Like we take it so seriously, probably to an extreme. So a lot of times when Daniel and I cook together, or if I cook something for him, I want to make something that he's just going to rant and rave over, that he's just going to really, really like, that we'll actually enjoy, whatever. But if it's just me, like when he's gone, dude, pizza rolls or takeout or ramen, whatever is just the fastest, most convenient thing possible. Like I'll find these really cool looking recipes that I'm so excited to try that just look amazing. And I'll wait until there's a time where he and I can like eat it together and like really enjoy it. If it's just me, or if he's like, oh, I've got a soccer game, I need to eat clean, I can't be eating manicotti, I won't make it. You know what I mean? Which I know I shouldn't. And I know that's not the right mentality. And sometimes, very, very, very rarely, sometimes when he's gone and if it is just me, like, yes, I'll make myself a nice meal that I'm actually really excited about. But honestly, it just always feels like a waste. I'm not gonna lie. Like, if it's only me that's having it, it feels like a waste of a meal. It just doesn't feel like it's reaching its full potential if I'm the only one experiencing it. You know what I mean? Again, I know it sounds dumb, whatever. But I'm not gonna do Paige Turner's input justice. And why have me rephrase everything she said when I can just play you the clip? So, here we go.
The reason there's no male equivalent to girl dinner is because dinner doesn't mean the same thing to a man typically as it does to a woman, right? Women, for most of their lives, are expected to participate in the thinking, planning, and executing of meals. Even growing up, women are taught how to help in the kitchen and men are taught how to help outside, right? Like women have had the mental load of meal planning and meal prepping put on them from a very young age. I remember snapping like green beans, husking corn when I was a kid to help out with meals. I don't know if my brother was with me doing that. And so when it comes to eating, we're tapping out. When a woman is eating on her own, she's saying like, I'm done. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to prep. I don't want to cook. I'm just going to eat what is readily available to me quickly, because my brain is shot. I do this every day. I don't want to do it again. Whereas a man expects every meal to be a meal because those meals have historically been prepared and planned and cooked by someone else for them. And so their expectation is, hey, this is an enjoyable experience because I get to sit down at a table and eat this home-cooked meal that somebody else poured themselves into. But I didn't have to pour myself into it. And so when a woman's on the other side of that, she's saying, nobody's pouring themselves into me and my meals. Therefore, I'm going to take the path of least resistance and take a load off and eat my girl.
Isn't that so good? Like that, like I said, I watched that and I was like, damn, there it is. And it just clicked, like immediate light bulb moment. So yeah, that's girl dinner. I think there's so much truth in that. Because the type of people that say, just make me a list, that mentality, specifically when it comes to meal times and prepping food for, especially for more than one person, for a whole family or anything like that, there's so much more that goes into it. And that's really the massive extent of mental load, because it's not just, oh, I'll help you cook dinner. Yes, that's a nice gesture. Yes, that's helpful. But that is literally the final 20 feet of a stretch at the end of a race. You're not taking into consideration all of the steps, all of the planning, all of the mental energy that it takes to even get to that point of just cooking the food or setting the table. because you've got to decide, okay, what does everybody want to eat? Dietary restrictions, allergies, all that stuff. Do they have a soccer game and they need to eat clean, or do they need carb heavy, or little stuff like sometimes Daniel will be like, oh, let's cook this for supper, and then we'll meal prep it. And I have to be like, no, Daniel, you don't want to meal prep some sort of fish. You know what I mean? Like, or this just doesn't heat up well in the microwave. This is not a good meal prep option. Little things like that. But yeah, you've got to consider all of those things. Then you've got to do the whole tally, which, is like the worst part of prepping any food, is making the list of ingredients, mentally going through every single recipe, each dish, each meal, and being like, okay, I need this, and this. And then you have to go and look in your fridge and in your cupboards and be like, okay, what do we already have? What do we not have? And then from that list, then you have to make the grocery list. And you have to remember all the little things. Then you have to actually go to the grocery store. You have to buy all of these things. Then you come back. Then you have to put all the groceries away. Like, it's a whole process. It's not just, what do you want to cook for dinner? It's not that simple. It's just not. It's not that simple. Overall, mental load, decision fatigue, girl dinner, all this stuff. Take it for what you will, but I would say maybe check in on your partner. Make sure they're doing okay. Make sure you're doing okay. If you guys need to have a sit down and maybe say like, hey, this is how I'm feeling. How can we resolve this? How can we balance out the workload a little bit? Balance out that mental load, especially. Maybe don't just say, make me a list or tell me what you need help with. Because the whole thing is, oh, what do you need help with? Kind of insinuates that it's your responsibility to do everything and they're doing you a favor. When in actuality, it should be a teamwork thing. Like, you both should be responsible for having a clean house. And then you just divvy up the chores as necessary. It's not only on one person. It's not on one primary caregiver or one primary person to do everything and the other person is just helping. It should be a 2-person job, I think. Personally, that's just my take on it. And then also, you kind of can't get mad at your partner for doing something wrong or incorrectly if you never actually tell them what they're doing wrong or incorrectly. You know what I mean? Like, I get it, dude. I get it. It is an easy trap to fall into of, oh, I'll just do it myself. But that won't actually solve anything. And it won't actually change anything. And for the partners that are maybe being told like, dude, you did this and you didn't even finish. Like a nice easy example is, okay, so cool, you took the garbage out, but you didn't put a new garbage bag in. Something like that, where the other person has to go back behind you and basically finish the job. If your partner is telling you like, hey man, you forgot this or you did that, whatever. Again, I know it can be tricky to get defensive and it can be tricky to kind of see it as like an attack or as nagging. But try to just kind of see it from their perspective. Try to kind of look at the bigger message that they're sending of, hey, I want this to be a team effort. I don't want to have to nag you. I don't want to have to come behind you. And just do your best to try and remember. And if it's something, like I said, if it's something like Daniel where he just does not realize it or he forgets, I think that's also fair sometimes to an extent to say, hey, sorry, babe, I forgot. It does not occur in my brain that this has to happen after this task or whatever the case may be. You know what I mean? And I think the other person should receive that input as well and be understanding of that. But ultimately, like I said, difficult conversations, but I think it's conversations that need to be had. And don't just bury it down. Don't just ignore it. Don't just vent to other people about, your partner not doing something if you didn't tell them you don't like that or whatever the case may be. So that is it. That is all I have for y'all this weekend. I have some exciting topics with some guest appearances planned for y'all coming up soon in the next month or so before this baby gets here. I'm officially, as of today, in baby month, meaning Baby kimchi is due October 16th. It is now September 16th, so I'm counting that as baby month. I don't know if other people count it as 36 weeks, which is technically in like 2 days for me, or if they're counting like the calendar month of when the baby is due. I don't want to count that because then that's only 16 days. That's not a full month. That's 2 weeks. So I'm saying that right now, officially, I am in baby month and also officially on baby watch. So yikes. And let's, fingers crossed, let's hope she does not come too early. But yes, that is it for me. Make good choices, be a decent human being, take care of each other, let each other know if y'all need help with the mental load or with decision fatigue. That way we can get y'all taken care of. And I will catch y'all next time. Okay, bye!